So I just want to explain for the folks that are going to watch this, not for you folks, but for the folks that are going to watch this, that it is a long video and a long audio channel. So it usually goes for about over an hour. And there will be, you don't have to listen to the whole thing. And or if you want to re-listen to it, you can also go down and look on the recording when it's posted on YouTube. You will see there's chapters down there. You can roll through those chapters and pick the question you want to listen about. So folks will ask questions, we timestamp it, and then you can go to that chapter. I'm sure you know how chapters work on YouTube. If you don't, you can learn very easily. You just go there and scroll down the bottom, and it'll tell you who's asking a question, what the question is, and then you can go to those minutes on the sort of, we have sort of a hybrid podcast and video going on. So that's one thing I want to make folks aware of. The other thing is that we will begin, like we always begin, with an introduction to the bloomscape this month. And we have a few things to talk about for folks that have installed packages early on. We have some things to talk about. And also want to let you know that if you are all members of CBA, so all you have to do to figure out what events you want to go and see is go to our event page and register for those events, and make sure you log in before you start your registration process, because if your dues are up to date, you'll be able to log in, and it won't be any charge for you to register for any event you want to go to at our bee yard or any other event. So I'm excited about our bee yard this year. We started a new project, which I think is going to work really well. It is a totally transparent colony. We installed bees in it last weekend, and I encourage you, if you weren't at the bee yard, and some of you were there and froze, but if you weren't at the bee yard and you want to see that, watch the videos that are coming out. One is the construction of that transparent colony. The other one is the installation of the bees. And I took a little short of undertaker bees carrying dead bees out. And also there's some explanation of what they're doing. So I think that transparent hive is going to add a lot to our experience at the bee yard, because the behaviors that I've already seen in there are amazing. They're not things that you can see if you put bees into a darker space, and all you can do is observe them by pulling combs. You see a lot that way, but you don't see what's occurring in their habitat as they walk around and engage in the chores that bees engage in. It's a very, very interesting study right away. Our packages this year came up. We had some early packages that came up right at the end of March there, and they came up with a fair amount of small hive beetles. And in the transparent colony, you can see them chasing the beetles around, and eventually they'll corral them. And it's a pretty interesting experience. So I want to encourage you to come to the bee yard and see that at our next bee yard event. And by that time, I think we'll have a lot of drawn comb and so forth. So it'll be easy to see. Right now, they're clustered and drawn comb, and you can see them go to the feeder, come back to the cluster. It's really amazing stuff to see. And I don't think I've ever seen it done before. So this is sort of a first, I think, in videography for beekeeping. So it's kind of funny, kind of fun to see. All right, so let's get started. And I think I want to get started with the bloom calendar, just to review what's going on in our area down here. Be a little bit different for the folks in Maine, and I would like to have some feedback from other folks that are farther away than Cheshire, Connecticut, or the center part of Connecticut, and see what kind of blooms they are seeing. So anyway, looking forward to April, we have a lot of blooms coming on. And if I forget, somebody remind me to discuss what's occurring right now with packages that have unfortunately been installed right at the beginning of this cold snap and what they're kind of going through. but you see pussy willow came out on the 3rd here in the center part of Connecticut. Weeping willow is out, bees don't work. That is just something that I put in my notes. But in the next couple of days, I should have put in the red maples. So the way I run my bee calendar is I leave the dates that I saw the same blooms last year. I leave them in until I witness them again in the current year, and then I change the date. So the maples, the red maples, some of them are already out. But I noticed that the ornamental cherries aren't out. We will have queen bumblebees flying very soon. The crocus, of course, is out. Red and Norway maples are really close to being out at this point. Dandelion, wild cherry, crabapple trees, peach. Those are from the orchards. That's the early bloom in the orchard. And then purple dead nettle. Some of that stuff is out already. There's red bud that'll come out, blue myrtle, and some lawn violets. Lots of things will be coming out in April, and it goes all the way down to, you'll see the mustards, and then the apples come out at the end of the month. So April is a pretty heavy month for blooms. Not all of those blooms you see in April are sustaining bloom. I mean, our principal blooms, except of course for the orchards and some of the other tree blooms. So crab apples, occasion, of course, and then for the red maples, you're going to get a lot of flowers out, and bees will work them. You'll see pollen coming back in, nectar from that. All right, so it's a really good month for blooms, except when your bees can't fly. You know, that's the case. That's where we're at right now. Our bees really can't fly. And we started some packages in the yard. And of course, it's easy enough to feed them. And if you didn't start your packages on drawn comb and put in a little bit of bee bread that you had stored around, you know, this is the danger of a late March package installation. If you're expecting them to draw comb, they might be able to do that. They'll release the queen because they're in a nice warm cluster, but they won't be able to get any protein for brood. So if she starts laying, you know, she's sort of stalled at that point. Bees that are shook in a package aren't like bees that have a whole lot of fat bodies. They came from a warmer climate, and they have been, using those resources. So it's not like, they can really come up to the task of raising brood without any protein. And because we have a bunch of small hive beetles in the packages that we just got, unfortunately, we don't have, I would hesitate to put any patties on there, because if the pollen patty that you put on is not the right formula, if it's not the right formula for bees, it will be, the small hive beetles will thank you and begin to make a lot of, that becomes food for small hive beetles. All right, so let me just recap again where I think we're at with, if you put in packages and you put them in on foundation, expecting them to draw comb, they will, as long as you're putting in 1-to-1 syrup. The queen will come out of the cage and she'll start laying. That's what queens do. She's ready to do it, but unfortunately, there won't be any protein in that mixture. Not enough protein in that mixture for bees to stimulate their mandibular glands and make brood food. So you just have to, it's going to be a delayed start for those packages. If you put a pollen patty in there, if you had them standing by and you put a pollen patty in there, then you might see some brood rearing. If the pollen patty that you put in is reasonably suited from a nutritional standpoint and ground correctly, so the bees can actually digest the pollen that's been put in there, then you might get some brood stimulation from that. But it won't be a matter of months. It'll only be a matter of days until, it seems like to me, bees will fly tomorrow and collect pollen. And so that will be the start of hopefully some production of brewed food in the packages that were just installed on foundation. So is anybody have any questions about that? So forsythia blooming, the bees like them. That's what she's asking. The bees like forsythia. In all the time I've been keeping bees here in this area, I've only seen bees work forsythia 1 year, and I'm not really sure what they got out of it. So my short answer for that would be no, it's not a significant bee food. Now, in that year that they were working forsythia, it might be possible, I can't remember, it was about 6 years ago, that there was nothing else blooming at the time. But in this case, forsythia and pussy willow usually come out exactly at the same time. And you would never get a bee colony to go to forsythia if there was a bloom like pussy willow out. All right, so no, the answer is no, they don't hate them, but they don't go after them. All right, Berkshire County, Mass, crocus, yes, crocus, snowdrops. Migratory bees are up early. That might be from, I would guess this is from Amy. She's making some statements about what's blooming, crocus, snowdrops, and she's got like a little bloom calendar going. And the migratory bees are super early, meaning, I guess, that's the consequence of a kind of warming climate down south. And they're coming up here. There's a problem with that, of course. They're not going to meet their they're not going to meet the whatever it is that they need when they come here. They might be a little bit precocious coming up that early. So yeah. All right. So got a question from Amy, and the question is, could you please elaborate on grinding pollen? What size, citation, and global patties were found in? All right. So yeah. So I don't know the sizes, except I know that pollen is in the 200 micron range. And the question has always been with commercial pollen substitutes. Are they putting in formulas? Is the formula, which is by proprietary, right? We don't know it. Is the pollen that's provided, or the protein that's provided in there, is it ground sufficiently so bees can digest it, put it through the digestive system? And there's been some talk that it isn't, in some patties. And, if you, so you have to really consider if you're a conscientious pollen patty manufacturer, you have to consider grain size. We're not going to grind pollen. If we collect pollen, it's already in a size that bees need it. So the best pollen patty would have natural pollen in it. So like I said, it's anywhere from 30 to 400 micrograms. There's lots of different micrometers, not grams.
Are you seeing the?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So, and I know some people who were at the last Bee Talks heard this already, but it is a iNaturalist site. And this is explained in the links to the instructions. But you could basically take pictures with your phone of different blooms you see and add them to this this kind of dedicated, what they call a project in iNaturalist for the Connecticut Beekeepers Association. And, it was just me. Bill has added some even over the last few days. And then we also have somebody new who's also added the Siberian squill, and I think that was from Northampton, Mass. So as we build it up, particularly over the next couple months, it should be pretty interesting. And there's different ways to look at the information, kind of in a list format where you could more easily see the dates that these were observed. but you can also see a map where we're seeing these observations. And I know, like, I'm not in London, but I was over there and I took a picture of a skunk cabbage, and that's why that's there. But it'll be interesting, if we get more people who want to get add stuff. It'd be interesting to see what we come up with and where the sightings are coming from and so on. But
Yeah,
it's not too hard. So
no, it's not too hard to use. And I mean, if you go back to to the map, so I think this is like incredibly interesting that we will, this is a permanent record. It's not something that gets erased. Isn't that true, Peter? I mean, we'll have this for a long time.
yeah. Now,
And
yeah, just to get us started, it says event in progress, and technically the event runs 2024. I just want to do that so people didn't add pictures from last year because the time is an important factor here to see when
yeah,
we're seeing them this year. But we can start a different project or extend this project next year, certainly. So we'll see how that works.
well, yeah, and the more participation we can get, um, it's just basically, I don't want to go on my soapbox about moving away from being hive centric, but maybe I will just for a second. I'll digress and say that the more we do things like this as a club, the more diversity we put in our understanding about bees. And that if you look at these blooms, you can get an idea of, and actually, I'm just putting up stuff that I have seen bees forage on. And I know Peter's doing the same thing. So I would encourage you to do that. Now, because if you're out and you see bees on something, all you got to do is click with your camera, and then it's so simple from then. And it will build a nice little base for us to have for a long time. It's valuable, in my opinion.
No, I was going to say in the link I have for the full guide, it does explain if you have your own photos, you didn't use the Seek app, there's a way to add them. So you could do it that way too.
Yeah.
A little easier if you
Yeah.
do put the Seek app on your phone though.
Yeah. Yep. And so that's great. And my bloom calendar, of course, is only for my area right here. And Connecticut has a bunch of different little microclimates. Bloom times are different in other parts of the state, even. So every state has little microclimates. So the more that we spread the geography out in our bloom calendar, the better you'll feel. I mean, the idea is that it relieves a little bit of tension around where your bees are getting food to survive. It just makes it a lot easier if you know that right now there's pussy willow out all over the place. Now, someone asked about spice bush. And spice bush is blooming, and I don't know if bees work spice bush. I don't think they do, but they might. If you see them working it, that's what we want to know. So you can, but if you know it's a spice bush and it's blooming, I really encourage you to break a little twig off of it and smell it. I mean, man, it just doesn't get any better. It's the most beautiful smelling plant that we have, natural plant we have in our, I think it's natural. Maybe it isn't. Maybe it's an invasive. Of course, everything's an invasive, it looks like. But yeah, so it's a wonderful plant for you to smell. Just get your nose in that thing and break it open, and that you'll know why they call it a spice bush. So is it a goal to create a Connecticut database or a regional database? And I'm saying it doesn't, I'm saying it doesn't matter. It's just data. You can use it regionally depending on where you are in the map. So if we had enough data points in any map, we might have, 10 or 15 data points in your town. In my old school spreadsheet that I put together over the last 5 years, I've got like about 70 or 80 plants in that just for Cheshire. And so every town has a variety of plants. So It wouldn't matter if it were somebody in Northampton or somebody down in Stamford, if they put it in there. So, it would be useful either way. So yes, so we don't have a specific goal for it. Is that true, Peter? We don't really have a specific goal for it, except for people to participate.
Right. Somewhat of an experiment, I think, this first go around, we'll see how it works.
Yeah. Okay, great. And thanks, Peter, for that. Peter, before you leave, we have some questions I'm going to answer, but before you leave, what have you seen in your temperature readings? Do you have anything that you want to share?
So I have an interesting situation this year because I have one colony that has made it through winter, but very, very small. And another is a nuke I just got last weekend. So
All right,
the
so
information.
just explain your sheet for a little bit before we get
Okay.
started.
Let me just show you something a little more meaningful. Okay, so this
using to measure, with and all of that.
Yeah, so this is the tiny colony, and they've just been hanging around 70 something pounds. The weather's been a little chilly, so I haven't gone in and pulled them apart. I'm afraid whatever's left of them, I'm gonna mess up. But I will be, I think, this weekend or early next week. And then as
So
far
go
as
back up again. Go back up again to this.
Yep.
So this started off the second graph down, right? Is the weight in pounds, and they started off January 8, and you're actually looking at usage of the stores, right? Isn't that what that would really be telling you?
Yes, it's looking at daily changes and just seeing if they went up or down. Now, some of that could be moisture. It's kind of in a tight, very, tight
Yeah.
variance here.
Yeah.
It gets very, very interesting when you get into May, because they can go up as much as 10 pounds in a day, and then overnight lose 4 or 5 pounds.
And the explanation for that would be forage.
Right.
Right.
And then moisture loss or evaporation overnight.
But what I want to illustrate on the chart we're looking at now, it's basically in the center of your screen, is that March is the time when your colonies are using the most of their resources and the least going back in, because there's not a lot out for them to forage on. And if you look at what's going on here, it's starting at like January, like at 0, and then you're down lower than -18. I guess is that pounds there? Weight in pounds, yeah.
Yes.
So by the time you got to March, you've used like 18 pounds of the weight. So that should tell you something about why we lose colonies in March to starvation. March is a starving month. If you got to make certain that, March is over at this point, but April is also gets a little bit tenuous, especially if you hit a cold snap like we have. So yeah, so you got to put something on them, syrup or something, because this is the time of year when it's critical. You have a nice big healthy colony going in, and then it uses all of its stores. So go ahead.
Yeah, so as I said, I don't know if this is a great example. And then I have this other colony which is brand new, of course.
Yeah,
So
okay.
not much data. And these little icons of a hive tool are just me adding syrup. Like they went through a couple pounds in a couple days and
Yep.
added some more. So not much information here, but
Well, the information is that they're using it, because if you're adding syrup and it's staying level, they're eating it, right?
Right.
And yeah,
Right.
so, and it's becoming water and carbon dioxide, which leaves the colony.
Okay, so this is again the hive that's alive but struggling a little bit. It looks pretty noisy here. But if I remove the Westbrook general temperatures, and there's a scale under the hive that has a temperature monitor, and I just leave in the lower and upper brood sensors.
Yeah.
and I know where the bees are. They're up in the upper deep. So you could see that the orange line is that upper deep.
Yep.
So it's been a little bit chilly lately.
Yeah.
So it's coming a little down a little bit, but once you reach a point that the hive is really making a lot of brood, it'll go up into the 90s and go like straight across in the low 90s. Pretty interesting to see.
Yeah. And there's brood in this colony.
I don't even know that. Like I said, I'm going to be
Yeah.
taking it apart as soon as it hits 60 degrees.
Yeah. So
I'm not holding out much hope for them though.
okay. Yeah. So however you read this, it's a little tenuous at this point that it's not showing you 90 degrees right now. So, but it might be that where your sensor is, and this is a point I want to make about sensor position. If you're going to use one of these things, you want to measure the temperature and humidity in your colony, you have to make certain that you compensate for the location of your sensor. So if your sensor is subject in any way to ambient temperatures, you'll get a different reading. If it's placed right in the brood nest, then you'll get the brood nest temperature. So, but Peter knows how to deal with this. And so just for the novice that are starting out and want to do something more to measure, want to become a technician like Peter is, and want to measure temperature and humidity and all of that. Sensor placement is scale placement, high scale weight, no problem. But temperature and humidity as sensors are you have to understand, you have to interpret how you place them. All right. So Alina is asking a question, and she's saying, Bill, what did you say you spray new bee packages with? Serve 1-to-1 sugar and water and some kind of acid. Okay, so yeah, that's a good question. Alina, that is that formula is listed on the label for the acid that the oxalic acid that you can use on your colonies legally. All right, so if you buy it through Man Lake and some other bee company, Better Bee or something like that. Better Bee probably is closer to us, so that would probably be where you would go, and you get their acid, and it comes with instructions, a label, a federal label, and that label is the law. That label was put on there by the Environmental Protection Agency, and it gives you specific instructions about how to use it for a package, how to use it as a spray, how to vaporize it, how to use it as a spray in a package, how to use it for a dribble, and how to vaporize it, right? So you have to follow those instructions. So it's laid out there. But I can tell you that it will tell you when you are going to use it to spray a new package, you first spray sugar water on them, and then you spray the oxalic acid and sugar water mixture. All right, so it's oxalic acid, because that was part of your question was what kind of acid it is. It's oxalic acid, and yeah, so that's how you would do it. Follow the instructions on the acid package. There's only one kind of acid you can use on your. Now, if somebody wants to go on the net and find the oxalic acid sold through Better Bee or one of those and get the label and put it up, we can read it together. Maybe we should do that. Let me see if I can find it. All right, can you see that? Somebody has to answer. Can you see that?
Yes.
All right, okay, good. All right. All right, so
Yep.
the label is pretty complicated, but we get to this part eventually. It talks to you about, these are the directions for use. These are printed on the acid label. All right, so so if you're going to use it as a spraying on the package, here's how you go about it. First, they say, put 1-to-1 sugar. Now, 1-to-1 sugar is very simple to mix. It doesn't take a lot of heat, so you can use just regular household warm hot water. So use your hottest setting on your water, and it's by weight, 1-to-1 by weight. So that means that if you bought 2 4-pound bags of sugar in the store, you'd have 8 pounds of sugar. A gallon of water weighs 8.34 pounds, so won't make much difference. That little bit of difference, a third of a pound, won't make much difference. And that's your ratio. 2 4-pound bags, 1 gallon of water. So if you wanted to make 2 gallons of syrup, it'd be 4 gallons. It'd be four times 4 packages, 4 4-pound packages, and so on and so forth. So it's very easy to get it to go 1-to-1. And then it says spray them at least a couple hours before you use the oxalic acid. Then allow that. What that does is that they're explaining what occurs here on the label. And this is for the honey stomach. It fills their honey stomachs with sugar water. And basically, they surmise that it reduces the ingestion of oxalic acid. Then it gives you instructions on how to mix the oxalic acid, 35 grams of it, and you can measure them. There's little spoons for measuring it, to a liter of water, or whatever says a 0.26 of a gallon, 1 liter. So you might have something that measures a liter, a measuring cup or something, and you put 35 grams of oxalic acid in that. And then you spray it on using a pump sprayer. Oh, that's per 1,000 bees. Yes, they don't make it easy. So, you have to do 7 times that for a package. All right. And then it goes on and explains the vaporization method and so on and so forth. Okay. So it's all laid out on the label. So that's it. Okay. Janetta, is a dribble as effective as a vaporization? Yes. So, but both of them have to be used when the colony is broodless. So remember, put that in your mind about oxalic acid. It's only a brood-free treatment. If you decide to use it in any other way, you will may get different results than what the formula is actually designed to do. So the formula is designed at the ratios and quantities specified in the label to kill 90% of the varroa. There's some question about whether or not that actually happens, and there's some question about whether or not the label is too conservative in terms of the dosage. But for the most part, you're obligated to follow that. It doesn't say how many times you can do it in a row. Of course, we know with dribble, you are pretty effective at that 35-gram level in a liquid form if you run it down the seams of bees when it is appropriate to do that, temperature-wise. I mean, you wouldn't do that in the middle of winter. I don't think I would, but you can do oxalic acid anytime because it doesn't have a vaporization piece. The oxalic acid vaporization doesn't have a temperature problem. It works all the time. And by the way, I will be using the vaporization sometime after next week, probably Sunday of next week. And I'll video that in the transparent hive, so we'll all have a chance to see what happens to vapors when they get into a colony. So that ought to be really interesting. Okay. Why aren't we feeding in March then? What do you mean by that, Jan? Do you mean, if you mean that we said that they were using a lot of stores in, okay. They were using a lot of stores in March. I was saying that March, if you have a large colony and you run into a lot of cold weather in March, right? We're in April now, that it's a good thing to add some food on them if they're low on stores. And if you've got a colony that you went into winter with and it had 70 pounds of honey, using 18 pounds of it, or even 25 pounds of it, which was what I would think would be used, you would still have plenty of stores left. But if in fact that colony is light on its stores because it, used more during the winter, or it didn't have as much going into the winter and as much honey stores going into the winter, then it could be possible that colony would need some food. I'm just saying that looking at the data, we know that bees use a lot. By the time it gets to March, they have used some stores that they may need. And it's up to you as a beekeeper to figure that out and feed them if they need it. That's part of what you have to learn about as a beekeeper. That's the most difficult part. That's the art of keeping them. You have to learn when they need to be fed and so forth. And so that's something you have to learn. It's not a formulaic. There's no formula for keeping bees. The formula is that you observe the colony under almost all circumstances, almost all times of year, to assess how they're doing, both biologically and from a store's standpoint. Once we get into the middle of April, you won't have to worry about any of this. If you have a colony that is strong, and it's strong in the middle of April, odds are it'll have its mind on swarming, and it won't be starving at that point. So, all right. Okay. All right. So again, just let me emphasize the difference between being an observational beekeeper and one that's looking for a formula or formulaic treatment piece. Although I did put out a treatment formula for folks to look at, because that particular part of controlling Varroa lends itself to a sort of programmed treatment schedule. So take a look at that piece of it. But for the rest of it, for the biology, the food, and all that, it's something that you have to observe in the colony. Yeah, I can.
Okay. I gave my bees a lot of sugar cakes in the fall and winter, and they haven't eaten them. And it just seems like a colossal waste of sugar. Is there any way I can repurpose that and make it into 1-to-1, or is it like full of bacteria and I should throw it out?
So it's been there all winter, right?
Yeah.
And it's still sugar. Like, how did you make
Yeah.
it? How did you make it? You just added water?
I followed the directions on the CBA website, which was like add a little bit of water and swish it up, and then make it into like a patty or whatever. And yeah, it's just
yeah, try to get a weight on it and throw it in water. You'll be fine.
All right, it's not like
no
contaminated or anything.
No,
okay.
no. Well, sugar's a preservative, like we use it that way. So, really doesn't get a lot of mold that grows on it. But take a look at it. I mean, if there's something else, if it does look bad, then don't use it. But if it should be fine to just put in water.
It doesn't look bad, but I didn't know if if it had bacteria or something, and it should just be tough.
No.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Okay. Holly wants to know, yeah, right there at Will, he's writing the action with the eclipse, and he's wondering, will it have a sort of an effect on bee behavior? I'm going to guess the answer is yes, but it will be temporary, of course, because in where we are here in Connecticut, we're on the fringe of the red area of the eclipse, so we won't go into total darkness. But I've been around for total darkness, but I don't recall what was going on with bees. But of course, when the bees lose all sight of the sun, and if in total eclipse, they wouldn't be able to figure out anything, right? They wouldn't be able to figure out where they're at, where they're going to, because they use, the ultraviolet rays of the sun to actually home in on. So it'd be very interesting to see what would occur. Now, so I've done a number of bee removals in my life. I don't do them anymore, but I remember being in a closed attic where a colony found its way into that space and they began to fly in the attic. So they got confused. So there were hundreds and hundreds of bees that were in the attic. And the attic had a light in it. You could turn it on. So I turned it on so I could see. And hundreds of bees took off from the floor and began to fly. They just flew all over the place and they were buzzing around my head and buzzing. I turned the light off and they dropped to the ground. Right? They had absolutely no way of being able to fly without light. Bees cannot fly without ultraviolet light or any kind of light, some kind of light anyway, some stimulus of light. Right? So yeah, my guess is they'll just hang where they are or fall to the ground. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see. Totally great question. Totally your job is to get in your car, go to New Hampshire, where the total eclipse is. Maybe you can go up to New Hampshire is where it's going to be, and then let us know what happens. What is checkerboard mite check? I'm sorry, I don't understand that question, Janetta. I don't know what that is.
I think that might mean where the sticky board has like blocks, so
Yeah,
you can just count a few cells and
yeah,
extrapolate.
yeah, you can. There's formulas for that. But if you're in that business, you've got a lot of mites. But you usually can, after 72 hours, you can find the mites that are down and count them very easily. Right. So once you do that, you'll see it'll be fine. All right. Can feeders, so there's a question from Lisa. Can feeders be left on during an OA vapor treatment? They say no. All right. So, and the same thing with formic acid, but it's done all the time. And there's really not much of a problem with it as far as I know. But I don't think it is something that you should plan on doing. So you can do your, it's easy to take a feeder off, do the OA treatment, and then put it back on. So that's not really a problem. And if you wanted to be safe, I think you would do it that way. Now, I'm not sure if it makes much difference, only that the bees would be in the feeder, and you want to make sure that you get all the bees in the colony and give them all a good dose of oxylic acid vapor. Now, I will have a feeder in the colony that I put oxalic acid in the transparent colony. I'll have a feeder in that and we'll see what happens when I do it. Oh, so Carrie wants to know, is there any recommendations for solar powered electric fence? Yes, there is. Go to Premier Fence and they have a fence, a mesh fence that is specifically designed for bee yards and other livestock. You can see it's a bear fence. You get what they refer to as a bear fence. It's a mesh wire fence. You drive it in the ground. Then you can get one of their solar chargers along with it. All right, so they're two separate things. One is the fabric mesh, and the other one is the solar charger that actually charges the fence with a electric pulse. All right, so yeah, so that's what I would look. I'd look at Premier, and the reason I'm saying that you should go to Premier is because they're absolutely fantastic with customer support. They'll run you through everything you need to know if you have any kind of question at all. They have technicians that can answer it. They service their chargers. I've had their solar chargers for a decade or more, and and I put batteries in them and different charger modules. They never run out. I mean, they never just totally collapse. And if they do, then the only thing that could actually go wrong with a solar charger is that the solar array could get defective, but that very rarely happens. So that's kind of good. So I would do it.
Okay. Is my dog gonna be getting zapped with a mesh fence or
One time.
one time? Okay. They learn quick.
Dogs are pretty smart. No, I don't know. I mean, I don't think they'll go near it. There's, I was always convinced that an electric fence is totally benign to bees. And so somebody asked me one time, will the electric fence interfere with the bees or could it kill them? So I went to Premier and I asked them the question. So they put a whole team together to answer it. They said, hey, because the fence puts out a pulse, an electromagnetic pulse, every once in a while, it'll interfere with honeybees. It can interfere with honeybees and it may be detrimental to their health. But they said we don't have any evidence of it. But theoretically, it may occur. And but remember, your bees are not in the business of flying through a fence. They come out of the colony and they fly almost straight up. And so they always avoid the fence. But I have seen dead bees around the fence. Now, whether or not they died because of the bee fence's power, I don't know. But I would not be concerned. We've been using them for a long, long time without any ill effects on the bees. All right, so and the solar. So Alina, Carrie, I have the same question. Electric fence is a pain in the neck. Why? Oh, Alina, elaborate. Why is it better? Why is it a pain in an electric fence? Well, that's what a solar fence is. It's electric. So what part of the electric fence, maybe Alina has one that is permanently connected to AC power. Yeah, that one can be a little bit of a problem. Yeah, okay, yes. All right. All right, Anthony, we're at 7:29 right now, 7:30, we're passing the hour mark. And he has a question about broodminder. And broodminder was giving free hive sensors to beekeepers living in the Eclipse Trail. Whoa, Anthony, talk to us about this. You want to go off mic and talk? Yeah.
Yeah, so they a while back they were again offering the sensors, and for like a shipping fee, you could get them. You had to live in the Eclipse Trail, and they wanted you to put them in the hive, and monitor. I would monitor what activity was happening. I mean, everyone assumes that during the eclipse it gets dark, the bees are all going to fly back to the hive.
Well, they can't fly without the sun.
Right, and hunker down.
Yeah.
And they're going to sense that as it's happening, just like dusk and dawn.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
So they were going to, they wanted to collect the data and make it available to scientists. I think it's being done all over the country. A lot of citizen science projects are happening to not only assess honeybees but all kind of nature and whatnot and activity. So
yeah.
It'll be interesting to see what results they gather from it. But you can go on the Google on the internet, and there's already a lot of speculation of and actually evidence of what has happened in the past with honeybees and total eclipse. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah. So there's a lot of good information for folks that are interested in figuring out what will occur and maybe what. But I don't think. What do you think? I don't think we're going to be close enough to total eclipse. No. Yeah.
No, not at all.
But I agree.
I'm in near Albany, New York, and we're really not that close it's going through the Adirondacks up near Saranac Lake, and Tupper Lake will be, pretty much the total eclipse trail. So, I mean, we'll see some of it, but nothing, significant.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. It's so, but this is a phenomenon that's occurring all over the animal kingdom.
Yes.
There's zoos that are putting up special cameras to watch peacocks and gorillas and everything else. We're kind of curious about it. I mean, of course, if you read anything about the history of eclipses, they of course have occurred in irregular fashion for since the moon's orbit and the sun's orbit got stabilized, but they've always been a very studied ritual.
Yeah.
And of course, there have been many cultures in the world that were a little bit less civilized than our current cultures. Well, maybe let me take that back. I'm not sure about that, but they would use animal sacrifices and even human sacrifices. And then, of course, it was all justified because the sun came back. Right after the eclipse was over, when the eclipse started, they sacrificed whatever it was they were going to sacrifice, and then the sun came back. So it's a very interesting phenomena. I'll be in Oaxaca, Mexico, and I have solar glasses. That, by the way, if you want solar glasses to watch the eclipse, even in a partial eclipse, it's dangerous for you to view it for any length of time. And for no length of time without glasses. Warby Parker, or if there's one around you, they're giving them out for free, right? So you don't have to be a Warby Parker customer. You just walk in and they give you the eclipse glasses. And I checked them out. I was in a place where I was close to Warby Parker. I went in, I got them, and they're the ISO regulated, eclipse glasses, and you can get them. Do not look at the eclipse directly, even a partial eclipse. You could also make a pinhole camera or use a spaghetti colander and use it that way with the sun over your shoulder. All right. So is there a best time? So this is 7:32. Is there a best time of day to treat with OA vapor? No, there's no best time that we know of. You can do it anytime you want during the day, except what I have a tendency to do is, and if this is a more nuanced answer, Jeanette, is that I do it in the morning, usually very early before the foragers are gone out, or I can do it again late at night. But if your colony's broodless, there may still be some foraging going on because anything could have occurred. You could have a swarm. I'm talking about like later on in the season now. You can have a swarm, colony goes broodless, and then you're playing catch up with the new queen coming on board and all of that. And there's a period where the colony's totally broodless. If you observe that, that's a great time to do vaporization. And in that case, if the colony's fairly robust and it's actually queen-right, except there's a virgin in there, I would do that early in the morning, block off the entrance and give them oxylic acid vaporization early enough in the morning where you're getting most of the colony that's still there, not doing a whole lot of foraging at that point. So yeah, so you can select a time when you think you have the largest population of bees in the colony. That could be at night. If you were brave enough to go out there with a red headlamp in the middle of the night and fumble around with oxylic acid, I wouldn't do it, but if you could do it at the middle of the night, you'd have all of them. All right, so yeah, so the most effective way to get the most amount of vapor in them is to do it when there's a minimum amount of foraging.
Hi, Bill. Thanks for taking my question. I am one of the lucky ones that was mentored by the grand Jose Salinas. I wanted to check in just because I'm in my 4th year of beekeeping, and I've been looking at the AZ hives, the Slovenian style, which I'm very interested in. But it's not a big following here in Connecticut. I was just wondering if you had any ties, and I can do a side email with anyone in Connecticut that has converted from a Langstroth to a Slovenian.
Oh, for a conversion, I don't know about, but there are people that are using the Slovenian hives.
Yeah, if I can send you an email, or somebody on your team that has a possible couple names, I would love to go to their apiary and check it out in person. I haven't seen one in person, but I've done a lot of research.
Yeah. So Mark Surzak is a big proponent of those. He's the one, and there's also God, I can't remember her name right now, but she uses Slovenian hives. They're very interesting.
Yeah, they really are.
Yeah, they're really interesting. And I don't know if you can convert them because I don't know if the frame sizes are the same. You know?
They're a little different. I think that the Slovenian are grooved on the top, but you know, I have a whole workshop at my hands, so it's something that I could probably do if I, you know, was to study all the dimensions. But yeah, I appreciate it. I'll send out an email and see if I can get a couple names so I can contact them and see if I can join them a day.
All right. Okay. So what you want to make sure you do I mean, the hive itself, I'm not sure if the frames, I don't know if it's all natural comb or if the frames really have side bars and bottom bars on them. I can't remember. If they do, then you could do a cutout and put your Langstroth frames in a Slovenian hive just by doing a cutout, and elastic bands. So yeah, it'd be interesting. So yes, Stacy, send me something if I can, and I'll send you Mark Surzak's contact, and I'll rummage through my email if I can figure out who else has. So if anybody else has any other experience with Slovenian hives on this call, speak up, and we'll get.
Hey, Bill,
Yes.
the one insight I'll give you is I had a beekeeper that came to me wanting to get bees on his frames. And
Yeah.
what he did is he stuck a dowel across the top and just tie wrapped them, and they'll fit right into a Langstroth hive. Oh, I had to put a shim in there because I think they were a different height. But
Okay. Yeah.
but just
So,
putting a dowel across the top, you can put those in a Langstroth hive with a shim
oh,
to
she wants to.
make the
I
box.
think Stacy wants to go the other way. She wants to go from Langstroth to the.
Yeah, but I think someone made a comment about the interchangeability or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. So you're saying it can go in there.
Yeah, if you want to start your bees, on those frames, you can just
Yeah.
put a dowel across and stick them in your Langstroth hive to get the
Started.
frames established.
Ah, that's
Oh,
what you're.
that's a great idea. Thank you,
Okay,
Kurt.
that's what you're saying. All right.
Yeah.
So, but all right. So that's good. The other way is if Stacy has access to her woodworking shop. So if you knew the width of the bar, which you can find out, and the length, which is easy enough to find out, you run a kerf down the center of that bar, right? And then you can cut a little 1.5 inch strip of foundation out and put it in that strip. So let's say you made an 1/8 inch kerf down the center of that bar. Then you put that little strip of starter strip in that bar. Then you have to wax, you melt wax, and you go down each side of that strip and you fasten it to the bar that way. Now I can tell you from experience that if that seems tedious, it's really kind of interesting and fun to do because you can use pipettes, which are really cheap. They're a scientific thing. They call them pipettes. And they're like a little eyedropper thing. And they're very inexpensive. And they will suck up liquid wax and you can distribute it down the seam of that starter strip with precision. And it's really a lot of fun to do. It smells great and it's good to do at night after dinner. And not only that, you will be able to, if you come to the bee yard, you will be able to see the ones that I built for the transparent colony, because that's exactly what I did. And then you'd be able to see them there. But Kurt's suggestion is kind of cool too. I like that.
Thank you.
All right. All right. So we're still back on, we have a couple things. I don't know if we should go back up on the, like, so you have to be grounded to be shocked by an electric fence. Yes, Therefore, in no way bees will be impacted that way by being shocked. Yeah, that's right, Amy. They won't get shocked. The question is whether or not the electromagnetic pulse, the field around the fence strands would affect the bee, not the shock. All right, so given the significant amount of mountain laurel in our area, do we need to worry about toxic mad honey? Andrea, great question. Yes, no. I said yes and then no. You don't have to worry about it because bees don't work it much, but they will work a little bit of it. And as Andrea is saying, that the nectar in mountain laurel and its family of flowers has a slight amount of toxin. Mad honey is a little different than that. Mad honey has a hallucinogenic in it. And the Romans used this effectively in their war. But mountain laurel and azalea and other little plants in that family, including buttercup, that little seemingly innocuous little plant that you used to hide, put under your chin to see if your girlfriend loved you or not. That little buttercup has a little poison in its nectar. But because it's so diluted and there's such a minimum amount of it, there has never been an incident that I know of where bees have poisoned people with their honey. And it certainly doesn't happen in Connecticut. I know that for sure. So I don't think we have to worry about that. But you have to know that that is out there. That's kind of interesting. Now, in some Asian countries where open nesting bees, very large ones, will open nest on cliffs, they collect a lot of nectar from plants that impart a hallucinogenic compound in their nectar. And it is something that beekeepers collect in really dangerous circumstances with ropes. They climb cliffs. You can see videos on it on the internet, on YouTube. I suggest you do that. It's kind of fun to see. But also, they get a little bit buzzed off of it, so in some future bee adventure I go on, I have been like thinking about that, going out down there to that. And hey, Barbara, I'd be able to do that, don't you think? The only thing I would discourage you from doing, there's this mythology about hanging bacon on your bear fence to train your bear that this is not a good place to go. No. I don't know about you, but I think the whole point is to keep bears away from your bee yard. And I don't think that, putting bacon on there is a good thing. So I would just discourage you from doing that. I don't think it's necessary. There's plenty of instances where people have seen bears get struck by a bear fence and they just run away. But, if it's really something that, if a bear is, excuse me, let me start over. If a bear is really hungry, so you can get in trouble. Alina is asking, how's the transparent colony doing? It's not an aquarium hive. It's really doing well. It is building comb. It looks beautiful. Go on and look at our posts. If you use YouTube at all, put the Connecticut Beekeepers Association on your YouTube feed, right? Subscribe to our page and you will see the videos. And I don't think you should miss them. I think that there's a lot of really cool stuff in there. You can see it already. But there it is, way up on the top there. You can see the temperature piece on
Sure, I can walk you guys through it quickly before it's out. But what you can see is that the orange line, the bees are in the temperature of the brood range. So
yes,
I'm realizing that they're raising brood. But you can also see how the lower blocks really, so this is a 5 medium hive and there's a sensor above every box. The closest one to the dash line, which is the outside weather, you can see that from the very bottom moving up, they track the outside temperature, but as soon as you get, the orange one is actually 2 boxes from the top. So it's the 4th box up. The
Yeah.
5th box up is the one that's like right below it. So you can see by the temperature, if your sensors are placed appropriately, where, you know, when and if they're raising brood. And I actually have sensors in a dozen colonies and I only have 3 of them raising brood right now.
Okay, so you're pretty clear about how you, so you're reinforcing something we discussed earlier, which I think is really important as we're looking at your sheet here, is that if the sensors are placed from your experience, you know how to place them, is what I'm trying to say, and then you get reliable data from them. And that's my point.
Well,
If you-
they're all placed in the middle of the hive, but it's just,
Yeah.
I have a 5 hive box, so they're not going to be in all 5 boxes over the
Right.
winter.
Yes,
Oh.
yes. Okay, yeah. All right, so great. So that works. And you're finding that it's useful to you. So you have sensors in all your colonies, and you said how many are raising brood?
I have them only in 12 out of 65 colonies, but only like 3 of them are raising brood.
In the ones that you have.
The ones that I have, but I don't supplemental feed, and I'm up in Berkshire County. We got 5 inches of snow today, so but this colony was the first colony that started raising brood, I think. And it's a really big, strong colony. The other ones that are raising brood, incidentally, are small colonies, but they have insulation on them, and this hive does not.
Aha. Oh, my favorite thing is to talk
Getting
about
some good data I'll share with you later, Bill.
Okay, great. I mean, so, I want to, data has a very important place in the way that we deal with our colonies. It gives us another dimension instead of looking inside the colony, but it doesn't, of course, replace the observation. I mean, because a sensor can fail and a lot of things can happen, and it doesn't mean that your colony's dead, even if the battery could go bad. I was on Broodminder's initial rollout as an experimental user, and that's when they had humidity problems and battery problems. So I never got back to them and started to use them again. But I think that those problems in their early production are way behind them at this point, and it's a good thing and a lot of fun to use. Now, if you're ever fortunate enough to see this colony, you are going to be transfixed with watching the behaviors you never get a chance to see. Like, how do bees approach a feeder? How do bees chase a small hive beetle? How do undertaker bees, what do they do before they take a bee out of the colony? And there's a specific thing they do. They clean everything off of it that they need. So who knew that undertaker bees clean dead bees before they take them out of the colony? Did you know that? I didn't know that. I mean, these are things that we CBA beekeepers with our transparent colony are going to know that no one else knows in the whole world about bee behavior. But, this is going to make Tom Seeley jealous. I know it is. So anyway, yeah. So what to be, Amy wants to know what the undertaker. Well, so you've got a package of bees, right? And you spray them with sugar syrup to keep them alive before you install them. There's always a layer of dead bees on the bottom of the colony, right? So they get sugar syrup on it. The difference between those bees that are dead and alive ones is that the live ones, it gets licked off. The dead bees have it on them. So they're dead on the bottom of the colony, and the undertaker bees are sensing the fact that they have sugar syrup on them, so they're cleaning them off. Now, other things may occur during the season that we'll be able to see, like we might be able to we might be able to see what undertaker bees do, during the season when a bee dies, and there isn't a lot of syrup on it. The comments are amazing. I mean, it's just so nice. They're gold teeth. Okay, that's what it is. Shoot over when it starts showing cover. All right. All right, so that's what they're cleaning off the bees. So you'll be able to see a lot of things, I hope. And also the other thing that I immediately saw was if you put a division board feeder in a colony, what kind of moisture profile do you get around that feeder? Because it's got a lot of moisture on it. So where does it go? Is it all through the colony, or is it near the feeder, or is it on one side of the feeder? So all of those things would just make beekeeping more exciting than the eclipse. All right. So thanks for coming. And I hope you enjoyed this. We're going to do it again next month. And I hope to see you then. Thank you.